Hey guys, welcome to the Powerful Man Show, where we help married businessmen save their marriages without having to talk about it, get unstuck, and gain clarity in their lives. As I like to say, life is too short for average. I'm your host, Doug Holt, with my co host, Tim, the Powerful Man Matthews. Now let's get this started. Hello, gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of the Powerful Man Show. Once again, I am joined with the man himself, Mr. Tim Matthews. Tim, how you doing, brother?
Doing well, Mr. Dougie Fresh. How are you?
Doing okay, man. I got a couple nagging injuries. I've got a chronic injury in my shoulder. I think it's a nerve impingement. So I'm going to go see somebody
Oof.
later today. And then, as you know, which I'll talk about in another podcast, I had surgery recently. So dealing with a couple little things, no big deal. Everybody in my house is sick right now with things going around. But other than that, doing great.
Awesome. Yeah, the frustrating those little niggling injuries. I've got like tennis elbow and golfer's elbow in one arm, which subsided when I rest it. And as soon as I start lifting again and doing martial arts, and weirdly enough, the rehab I've been given when I do it works really well.
When you do it,
I just get to be more consistent with
there's
doing
a
it.
previous podcast we talk about that, but anyway.
Yep.
So you had something on the table that you wanted to talk about. I'm curious, what is it?
Yeah. So I went up to Leeds recently, actually on the way back from the Alpha Reset a couple of weeks ago. So, and I was able to stop by and visit some friends, which was very enjoyable. These are friends that I haven't seen, some I haven't spoken with in years. To give some context, so when the Powerful Man began, part of the way that it got going was by me becoming aware of how I was living and how I would refuse to live a certain way anymore. And the way that uh, I guess, dealt with that was by coming clean on social media, which was kind of strange for a lot of people because I never used to post on social media. To go from posting nothing to all these very honest, really, posts about what was going on for me. And at that point, there was things going on between me and my father. There was various masks that I'd been hiding behind, just all sorts, right? So anyway, what happened in response to that, there were kind of three responses. One was messages from people asking me whether I'd gone insane, literally. Two, people asking me if I'd joined a cult. And three, people resonating with it and resonating with the idea that they'd also been wearing a mask too and hiding behind money and business and sports and various other things. Now, at that time, the friends that I were able to see a few weeks ago, they were the ones that I used to hang around with the most at that point in time, several years ago. So this must have been 8 years ago. And there's a reason why I haven't spoke to them, some of them, for years. And the way they responded, God, it brings so much up inside of me as I think about this. I'm glad I stayed true to what I felt called to do, which was just be honest, really. There wasn't a business or anything like that. So I wasn't standing by something. I was just being truthful and honest. But it was greeted with a lot of ridicule, shaming. I'd go into the pub. I didn't really drink much then either, which also would trigger them a lot. Because I'd go to the pub, but I'd drive, and I wouldn't need a drink. I'd started to learn how to have fun without needing to have a load of alcohol and so on. So that in itself often caused a lot of retaliation from certain people that would be there, which usually would die down after an hour or two, within which time I've either left or if not, I'd stayed around. And then we could get into having a good night because they'd be drunk and they'd be over it. And then the truth had come out. Oh, I wish I could do that. And it just made them reflect upon, well, why can't I do that? And so on and so forth, right? Equally, the same is true when I was being honest. I think in hindsight, I think it triggered them and triggered them to act in various ways that just weren't friendly, helpful, or nice, which led to the point of me just cutting them out, frankly. So I arrived in Leeds last week. I'm still friends with one of the guys in particular. I was one of the best men at his wedding. An amazing man. He's the kind of guy that everybody loves. I think he's been the best man with probably 5 people's weddings by this point. He's always practicing a best man speech, but rightly so. He's an amazing guy, and I've been able to keep in touch with him and stay connected to him. So I meet with him first. We have a beer, have a great chat. Then we'll go into his to watch the football. So it was the World Cup. England were playing Senegal, and there were 1, 2, 3, 3 or 4 guys there. Some of their partners as well, but 3 or 4 guys were there who were from this crowd back in the day, right? Nothing has changed for them. A lot has changed for them, but not in the way that you'd want it to change. And this isn't about me talking bad about them. They don't understand what we do. I don't try and explain what we do. They just group it under life coaching, which is fine. Bearing in mind, I just come off the back of an alpha reset. You know what kind of shifts we have there. Didn't try and explain what happens there. Didn't try and explain the kind of guys. And there's all this posturing going on with them, right? Oh, you're still doing that thing. But they've softened in their approach now over these past 8 years. And I think partly because they can see various ways in which I get to live and enjoy life. So I guess there's some proof to some degree for them of something. But equally, I think because what's happening in their lives, one of the guys has gone on to, he's not had any alcohol for the past 2 years because he became riddled with anxiety from drink and drugs, but he's also put on a ton of weight, and he's not really got to the root of what has caused the anxiety and the upset in his life. He's just took out one of the triggers, which was alcohol. So he's not in a good way, putting on a brave face, but not in a good way. Another guy, an amazing man. I tell a story about him at the Alpha Reset, as you're aware. Again, drunk, but on drugs, and just how can I say it? Just complaining about his wife and his life, and all the things that go with it. And then another guy just saying, "Hey, remember 8 years ago? Remember 8 years ago? Remember 8 years ago?
Friends?
Remember when friends, as you like to call them?" Yeah. And as the TV camera pans and picks out pretty English women in the crowd, they're nudging me. Look. I'm just like, yeah, like I get it. And clearly there's something lacking and missing, right, for them. And that isn't to judge them. So anyway, I was listening to something today and it reminded me of that memory. And this is why I wanted to share it. Obviously, we've heard about you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And this thing I was listening to was diving deeper into that and talking about a study that Harvard has been doing, following people over a very long, prolonged period of time, like decades, looking into this and looking at how many people can you actually have in your life and can you maintain a very close and meaningful relationship with, and the importance of the type of those people, as we all know, right? And as we're listening to this, something that they spoke about was the idea of, are you avoiding temporary disappointment just to experience long-term resentment? Idea being, are you willing to please the people around you? So, for example, my friends 8 years ago, who kind of like crab in the bucket scenario, right? As the crab tries to escape, all the other crabs try pulling it back down. That was the kind of scenario. So if I would have wanted to avoid temporary disappointment back then, just to stay friends and have a feeling of belonging and so on, I would more than likely have then experienced long-term resentment, because 8 years on, instead of me walking into that room, I would have probably been sat in that room along with them complaining about everything else going on in my life, experiencing resentment at the fact that I hadn't changed and followed my own truth and followed what I wanted to do, and so on and so forth. And I think it's very true a lot of the men we work with, right? The guys that come into us in the activation method, I think that's a philosophy through which they've lived, and it's got them into trouble. They've avoided temporary disappointment, be it of the wife, be it of the parents, be it of friends, whoever it may be, to avoid long-term resentment, only to end up at a point when where rather they don't have a clue who they are. They have a level of success and they look around, it doesn't mean anything. They think, is this it? And they resent the fact they're working so hard to be able to provide in a way that they're not really getting any level of appreciation, and they're just going along and people pleasing and saying yes to avoid the disappointment of saying no and really taking a stand for themselves. So I wanted to just dive into that. I know you've got some amazing insights around this. Talk about your experience with it and what advice you'd give to some of the guys if they're resonating with this and find themselves in this position.
Yeah, gosh, there's so many things to expand here. So recently, I had skin cancer removed from my neck, right? Just last week, as you know, Tim. And I remember I was sitting in there, and the doctor told me, he said, doctor says, yeah, unfortunately, I think you're going to have a scar left over. And I looked at the doctor and I said, you know what? A scar is a small price to pay for removing a cancer from my body. And I think about that in your story, right? There's many times, and we talk about this with our men, that that I've taken inventory of my life and removed other cancers. Now, those cancers could be bad habits, toxic people, as you're talking about, and you can remove them. It doesn't mean you don't love them. Doesn't mean you don't care. Like, I still like my neck. It's going to have a scar. It might hurt a little bit, it might sting, but removing the cancer that could kill you, it's a much worse effect, right? And that's what we want to, you want to think about this. When we take inventory of the people in our lives, the places, our environment, right? Also our thought patterns, we want to look at what are those things that are toxic that are holding us back. And we identify something that's toxic for you. And if you're sure it's toxic, then what you want to do is immediately do what you can, like I did with the cancer on my neck. I got a big bandage right now, is have it removed, or remove it yourself, I should say. And this could be as simple as sitting down right now, pausing this, and writing down the 10 people in your life that you're around the most. Which one of those are energy vampires versus energy givers? When you think about that person, do you feel light and free, or do you feel heavy? Right? These are kind of ways you guys can assess this. And again, they could be family members, and you're like, oh, Doug, I can't get rid of Uncle Bob or whoever. Okay, I get
Mhm.
it. But you can limit your interaction with Uncle Bob, right? You can limit the way that Uncle Bob affects you. You might not be able to, avoid Uncle Bob during the holidays or whatever else that may be, and whoever your Uncle Bob is. But there's ways that you can set boundaries for yourself to limit those interactions so you can be the best version of you. And when you're caught stuck in the past, right? Past friendships that all they have is history, and I call them remember when friends. We've all got them, by the way. That all they talk about those things you did 10, 20 years ago. And that's all you really have in common, except for maybe the local sports team. It's time to move on. It's time to find another group of men, right, that are out there for you. And this is why we have the brotherhood, frankly, and the inner circle and the other groups that we have with the powerful man, of men that are playing at a higher level, that are bettering themselves, not only for themselves, but for their families, for their communities, and for their business. Right? These are guys just like you listening to this, they're on a journey of growth, right? They're on a
Mm.
journey of growth. And this is the lifestyle, guys, where average isn't good enough. For these guys you're talking about, Tim, average is something they're striving for. They're hoping to get to average, hence playing the victim card. And how do you do it when you're in the victim role? What do? You complain. You complain because that's how you get sympathy, and that's how you get acknowledgement and connection with people, is by having them feel sorry for you, or complaining about your wife, or complaining about your job, complaining about the things that have happened to you, the weight gain, or whatever it is, right? And it's okay. I'm not saying you never complain, but guys, you want to pull yourself out of this. And if you have a cancer in your life, cut it out. Cut it out as soon as possible. You don't want it to metastasize.
Well said. And I'd agree. I think again, nothing against these people. The good people, they really are. And I think you hit the nail on the head. They're striving for average. And if I would have wanted to avoid temporary disappointment of, let's say, walking into the pub and everybody in there, giving me shit, quite frankly, and just, laughing. I laughed about it because, I knew where it came from. But if I needed to avoid that and sacrifice my own desires, just like if you want to avoid the discomfort of going for the surgery or whatever it may be, then you are going to be left with long term resentments that, oh, I wish I would have done that sooner. I shoulda, coulda, woulda, but it's too late at
Yeah.
that point. And the most successful people, the guys who we see in our program get the biggest results the fastest, are the ones that become the least tolerant to the people, places, and situations that are out of alignment with the level that they're committed to playing
Mhm.
at. I know that might sound ruthless, but I think at the same time, there needs to be a level of ruthlessness that you take towards being committed to what it is you want to experience in your life for yourself, for your kids, for your family. And that doesn't mean becoming harsh or hard. That just means being committed to something.
Well, also you got, the thing you got to remember, guys, is you can't lift somebody up by going to their level, right? You pull somebody up by going higher. It's kind of like the idea of, is the best way to solve the homeless population by becoming homeless yourself? No, it's by becoming wealthy and then contributing our ideas, right? You want to be the lighthouse. We have a guy that we call the animal, right? And I talked to him at his Alpha Reset about never, he's like, I don't post in the community because I don't want people to think I'm bragging about, how great things are in my life right now. I looked at him, I said, dude, never dim your light, right? You don't know how many people are going to be inspired by how many cool things you got going on. They're going to love to see it. And he's been posting and sharing, and guys are inspired, right? And what I'm saying this is like for you, Tim, when you go see these guys, I guarantee those guys go home, right? And they're like, man, I want what Tim has. I want the energy he has, his ability not to get hammered all the time, or whatever else it may be. They want some of that. And when you let your light shine, people notice. It's being the lighthouse. You do it in your marriage. You do it with your kids. You do it with your employees and your staff at work. You do it in your church or your synagogue or temple or wherever else it is. The men that listen to this show are leaders. You wouldn't be attracted to a show like this if you weren't naturally a leader or on your way to becoming a leader. And as a leader, you get to shine your light brightly. And people will test you. People will test you. And
Hmm.
that's so fun. To me, that's so fun. When you start to actually enjoy the tests and you feel that you're anchored like an oak tree, your roots are solid in the ground, people can't bend you, they can't move you. And that's a very attractive thing to women, but also guys, quite frankly, right? They want some of that. And that's where you become that kind of old adage, the man that men want to be and women want to be with. And most of us men, we want to be that first and foremost in our houses with our families and then also our friends. And so, guys, I'm going to encourage you to take inventory. Take inventory on these three things: the people you spend the most time with, working at home and otherwise, the environments you spend the most time with. Are you spending too much time in the pub or someplace else? And then also the thoughts and conversations you have with yourself. Which one of those are toxic for you? What is it that needs to be removed? What do you need to go in with a scalpel like precision and cut it out so it doesn't spread and bring you down? Look, I didn't want to have surgery on my neck, right? I didn't want to have somebody cut open my neck and cut out part of my skin. But the idea of cancer spreading was much worse, much worse. So I did it, right? I had that surgery. And years ago, 20 years ago at this point, more than 20 years ago, I had that surgery with a group of friends who I love dearly. I still love these guys, and I'm still in contact with them periodically. But they were kind of like sandbags to my balloon that was taking out, my hot air balloon, if you could imagine. I was in my 20s and I wanted that balloon to go. And unfortunately, these guys checked all three boxes, right? They're energy. Some of these guys listen to this podcast, and so they know this. They were energy vampires for me. The environments when I would see them wasn't conducive, right? It was a bar. It wasn't conducive for me at that time growing businesses. And they always complained. So I had to go my separate way. And I did it lovingly. right? And some of us, we just grow apart, right? That just happens. It's just natural. And it doesn't mean I don't love and care for these guys. I would be there for them if they needed me all the time. However, they're dragging me down. They weren't lifting me up. I'm always there to reach a hand out to them. One guy in particular, Tim, that I've mentioned to you and told you stories about, he's come back around. I'm helping him out. Great guy. Always has been a great guy. But at that time of his life, he wasn't the right fit for me, and I had to cut him out. And it's a hard thing to do, guys. You might end up with some scars. But scars are a lot better than cancer.
Very well said.
So, gentlemen, are you going to take action? Or are you just going to do what I call educational masturbation, going from one podcast to another, one show on YouTube to another, etc.? I would love for you guys to share. Post what you're cutting out. Go to the free Facebook group. Let us know. Start that conversation there. And if you have any questions on how to do it, how to break free, put them there. Our coaches and advisors are in the group and in the community, and they'll be there to answer your questions. And as we always say in the moment of insight, take massive action, guys. We'll see you next time on the Powerful Man Show. All right, guys, that's a wrap for this episode. But as I always say, in the moment of insight, take massive action. You see, there are two types of men that listen to a podcast like this. Those that go on from one podcast or show to another, just hoping things are going to change and realizing that they're going to be in the same place month after month, year after year. You see, I was this guy, so I completely get it. You may just not be ready. But there's also a second man that listens to a show just like this. And this is a guy who takes massive action so they can shorten the learning curve, compress time, and get results to be the wolf. See, WOLF is an acronym for wise, open, loving, and fierce. Now, ask yourself, which one am I? And just be honest with yourself there. And there's no judgment on my end, but if you're ready to move from deactivated deer mode, which is defend, excuse, explain, react, to activated wolf, wise, open, loving, and fierce, then go over to thepowerfulman.com/grow and go there now. In fact, I'll make it super easy for you. I will even put the link right in the description here so you can just click it and go over there now to learn more. Guys, in the moment of insight, take massive action. Go from deactivated to activated because like I said, life is too short for average. And I'll see you on the next episode.